if it gets on your nerves, don't listen to it. Don't subject yourself to that kind of stress. You don't need it. Like, it's like this is my field. Look at where I grow my fucks. Like, I just no.
Yeah, you're right. Yours came when you were 19, and you've not made any backward steps. You're definitely not the exceptions to the rule, but we're allowed to be grumpy old metal fans now, I think. I mean, between the three of us, we're either bald or grey, so we're there's no going back on that. What can you do? But we'll get onto the grumpy metal bits, the grumpy complaining stuff afterwards, because it's not all about that. Because good evening, by the way, and welcome to In the Abyss. Because before we do start moaning about anything, I want to talk about Obituary on Monday night. I think because I think it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile bringing up. Firstly, because an American metal band have come over here and they've played a 19-date UK tour, going to all sorts of random places, and it's they did a London show earlier in the year, but to actually go to places like Colchester, where I saw them on Monday night, fucking Norwich, and quick jaunt over to Northern Ireland, and they've done Bristol, they've done the South Coast, Newcastle, Glasgow, fucking everywhere. It's it's really impressive. But yeah, look, it was Bank Holiday Monday, so I went and had a few drinks in Colchester, which isn't the most exciting town I've ever been to. But wandered into the Hole of Wall pub, and Trevor Perez walked in, which was nice. And, had a pint with him, had a bit of a chat, and he was talking about how much fun the tour's been. He particularly liked Bristol because playing on a boat, playing on Thekla was particularly enjoyable. But thoroughly nice guy. Shout out to Colchester Arts Centre as well. Great venue, absolutely loved it. Fucking 1,000-year-old church, really cool. All run by volunteers, just full of dirty metalheads, and it just felt like I don't know. It felt strange, but it worked. Really lovely, clean toilets and reasonable bar prices. So, I think in this day and age, when you go into any metal gig, that's a privilege. I think I took a photo of the toilets. Actually, they were that good.
Jesus,
I wasn't nonsing. And merch as well. They had a proper fucking tour T-shirt with dates on it and everything. It's these things these days are fucking rare. Pest Control supported. And just like they were at Bloodstock, they were fucking awesome. They were literally in the pub round the corner where we were till about 5 minutes before walking on stage. Strolled in, walked up, half-hour set, saw your face off, walked off. Absolutely fucking brilliant, as you'd expect. And Obituary, look, I've seen them before this year. I was never the biggest fan of Obituary. I do like them, but I was never all that fussed. But this album that came out this year, Dying of Everything, is still one of my favorites of the year. And they were just fucking awesome. It was only like an hour and 10-minute set, 14, 15 songs, just everything you want. And the new stuff sounds particularly good. Great to be in a venue with no barrier as well. So we were there right against the stage. That always makes a nice change. And wicked.
Was it fairly varied set list, or was it focused?
Yeah, they kind of just it's dotted throughout their career really. That was 5 songs off of Dying of Everything, and then they touched on like 1 or 2 from pretty much every album, and finishing off with Slowly We Rot, obviously. But happy with the set list, especially when they're doing that many dates. They're not going to mix it up, are they? They just keeps it simple, and then they kind of get on with it. So great set. They don't do anything spectacular. They just fucking nail it. They just lay it down heavy, hard, sound great presence, really good interaction with the crowd. They're just really good at what they do. It's like what we were saying about Sacred Reich at Bloodstock. It's just chemistry and experience, and bands like that, they just know what they're doing. So quick shout out to a guy called Charlie Ellis Strength, who's Obituary's lighting guy. We had a chat with him for about 10 minutes after. I have badgered him about coming on this podcast because, Charlie, I reckon you got some stories. So please get back to me on that. And it was good to see the band outside the venue afterwards as well, doing photos, hanging around, because the tour bus was parked outside the front door of the venue pretty much, and they were all hanging about, photos, having chats, signing. Just makes a nice change. You go to these small shows and you've just got that interaction that you don't get at bigger shows. I mean, yeah, Maiden were awesome a couple of months ago, but it's just something about these small shows. You just can't beat that.
You're not. Yeah, I mean, what would happen if like Bruton was hanging outside? He'd get swamped. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
That's kind of stating the obvious,
but it's like if
you
see in the Metallica's stadium shows and that you've got Hetfield just sort of wandering around the outside of the stage before going on, and like when people are sort of milling in, he's sort of wandering around the stadium having a cigar, and he's just sort of meeting people. And I think it can be done. I don't see why not. Just because you're a global fucking megastar.
I think as well. Yeah, I mean, obviously, heavy metal bands are not boy bands. They're not going to get like a bunch of anonymous speaking teenagers running at them. It's not like that, and try and touch them. And it'd be quite cool if you could have, just not in a signing tent, just like, oh, how's it going? Like, wait, who was it that bumped into Dave Lombardo that time in the fish and chip shop?
That was our mate Darren. That was after a Phantomus gig, I think, at LA2. He was in McDonald's
and he was on the phone.
Yeah,
and he was on the phone, and he just went, "Wait, I've got to go," and he hung up the phone to speak to the fans. Like that. That's class.
Exactly.
That's a classy touch.
Exactly. Like deep down, I think as metal fans, we kind of expect to be treated that way, but you wouldn't want to say it, if you know what I mean. It's like, I'm your fan. I'm your priority. Come and talk to me. I've paid my money to come to this show. Come and talk to me. But
again, I think that goes back to some of the things that we've said over the last year in terms of when we've talked about the scene and we've talked about the relationship and the fact that there has to be a bona fide connection between the fans and the band, especially when the bands are starting out, and it has to be an authentic bond, because otherwise, if the fans reject the band or the act, the band doesn't go anywhere, because it's not like, even if it's not like the record labels are forcing these bands down the throat through mainstream media. Like, it's not like they every now and again you get the next, every year you get the next, or especially like when we were younger, the next pop out. It was the Spice Girls, and then it was All Saints, and then it was Girls Aloud, or whatever the fucking called. And there was always another band, and they would just shove it down their throat through mainstream media. No one's doing that with metal bands. They have to have that connection. They have to have that authenticity, and you have to build that bond and that relationship with your fan base, because those hardcore fans, they'll get you through the lean times.
Yeah, that's true. You've either got to have that connection.
These bands like In Flames seem to have forgotten.
But you've either got to have that connection, or you've got to be so fucking intense in your delivery, so good in your delivery. Like bands like Rage Against the Machine, for instance, they would never have been the type to really interact with a crowd or anything like that. But when they played, you were left gagging for it. Do you know what I mean? So that was a different kind of connection.
And I think as well, a band like Rage Against the Machine, they were so on point with some of their lyrical content that they were really the personification of a lot of the angst and the political ideology and a lot of the thoughts that a lot of their fan base had. Anti-establishment, but in a way that was quite intelligent as well. So really, pinpointing some of the hypocrisies of institutions and systems. So I don't think, you're right that you'd left gagging for more, but they were so on point that I don't think you needed to go and speak to them about what they thought about the Bush administration after the show, because they kind of knew from the lyrics what they thought. So but then again, it's at the end of the day, it's like, someone like Terry Butler, for example, or anyone from the vast majority of metal bands, these are, and again, going back to this idea of the working class roots of metal, most bands are marks for other things. Everyone's a mark for someone, right? So I'm sure like Terry Butler might be equally starstruck if he bumped into Tony Iommi outside of a club.
Yeah, you'd imagine so.
Also, the fact that, you know, if you're a fan of metal, whether you're in a band or you're just a fan, or you do a podcast or you write for a magazine, you've all got that shared thing in common. So why wouldn't you want to talk, not just to your fans, to fans of the genre? Because maybe they want to talk to you about other bands, maybe bands that you like too, and we can share that experience as well. So if you're in a metal band and you don't want to talk to metal fans, you're obviously not a metal fan.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
You know?
Yeah, you're right. Those conversations are important, and it's just it has to be no sort of well, I'm in the band, I haven't got time for you. You these days, because they have to work so hard with touring, they have they almost have to make that extra effort, go the extra mile. But I don't know, it seemed natural. When I was talking to Trevor Perez, it was just bought him a pint. It's not like he felt obliged to stand there and have a chat with me. He just did, and it's just nice to have a polite conversation with someone that you just bought a beer for. It doesn't matter the fact he's been in this massive death metal band for more than a couple of decades. It's a nice coincidence, And then he was out taking photos around Colchester. So it's like they're just enjoying their surroundings.
The irony is, you probably earn more money than him, you rich motherfucker.
Yeah, but he's got a way fucking cooler job than I have.
I don't know. This is an observation which might be complete bollocks, quite frankly, but I don't know. But I think since COVID has wind down, we started going to gigs again, and I think I sort of pointed out that the culture is a bit different. There always seems to be. Some people have said that etiquette's worse, but I've noticed at some metal gigs it feels as if it's a bit more respectful, like less stupid. Like there's almost, people don't want to get too close to other people, or maybe they're just in those habits. It's
I think there's a bit of that. Yeah, I agree with that.
I think, and I wonder if people are just becoming a lot more self-conscious and aware of personal space.
Yeah.
And that's translating to how they interact with bands. So actually, it's like when they see bands in the pub, it's like, oh, hi, I won't get too close or mad or intense or anything like that, because we kind of got out of that habit for a couple of years, and I think that's great. But I just felt like something I noticed.
Yeah, I mean, my conversation with Trevor Perez, like the first thing I asked him, because we were in the pub and Pest Control was still sat in the beer garden as well, and time was getting on. I just want to go and ask him what time they're due on. And he was like 9:05. I was like, oh, sweet. And he's like, you want a drink? Have a drink. And I was like, look, I just made the point to him that it's nice for a band to come to the UK and play loads of dates. And he's like, yeah, it makes a real change for them as well, because these days for a lot of bands, it's just all about the festival runs in the summer and all that kind of thing. And they don't get so much of a chance to go and do proper tours anymore because it's not necessarily cost effective. Festivals pay well and they come in, they play, they leave, they go on to the next one. It's like it's a necessary evil, but they do earn decent money out of it. So you can understand why they do those circuits. But the fact that they jumped on this tour of the UK right after doing a festival run, I don't know, for me, it just shows that they still give a shit and they still want to be out there and in the whites of the fans' eyes. As cliched as that sounds.
But I think COVID again is a factor, because not being able to do that properly for a couple of years reinforced what they love about what they do. And it's like, and they're all in their mid-50s at this point, aren't they? So they're not getting younger. So it's a case of we can still do this. We can still pummel an audience at this point. And we're lucky to do what we do, and they're still making good albums. So.
Well, look, most of the dates, a lot of the dates are sold out, and if they're not sold out, they're sort of like 99% sold out. So that shows there's a hunger for it as well in all these regional towns. Same with the tour that Trivium are doing at the moment.
Yeah,
same kind of thing, playing loads of random places.
I'm annoyed at that because they're playing Folkestone.
Folkestone, yeah.
Folkestone, yeah. They get a metal gig every so often, and there's a great lineup. You got Bleed From Within and Orbit Culture.
Yeah, it's a damn good lineup.
I don't yet have a car, and the train connection is just a bit of a sod. I can't really do it, even where I am in Kent. So it's
Yeah, I did consider the Cambridge show last week, but it was I just sort of an hour's drive. But I don't. I haven't paid enough attention to what Trivium have done in recent
No,
years.
yeah,
So
I'm
apparently they're going on a bit of a hiatus after this tour as well. They're sort of pushing it aside. They've got no plans to record another album. They're sort of going to take a break and do other things.
okay, fair enough.
So
I mean, I've seen it before. I mean, I saw them do a secret quote mark show back in 06, 07, where they all wore battle costumes and stuff. And it was yeah, it was all right. It was entertaining enough, but
no, I go back to when they did Download in 05, 2005, and they were on at sort of 11:30 midday, whatever it was, on the main stage, and there was fuckloads of people there, and that's kind of when they arrived, and they really did. So look, they've had a decent career. So if they are calling it a day from this point, fair play. But they'll be back, I'm sure.
Yeah, they'll be. It's a break.
Yeah. And Matt Heafy has been involved with all sorts of other things lately as well. He obviously produced the Frozen Soul album this year. He was on the Malevolence album last year as well, and the black metal side project he did with Isan as well, Ibarakai, or I can't remember exactly how you pronounce it, but that's really good as well. Really good, sort of Japanese themed black metal, and a couple of the songs are co-written by Gerard Way from My Chemical Romance.
Oh, yeah, Gerard. I know we can talk about what we don't like about My Chemical Romance, but that man, he does a lot. He's done comics, he's written stuff and drawn, and he's prolific in a lot of things.
Busy emo, but look, it was positive. I had a stinking hangover for about 2 days. Just drank way too much, but yeah, and like I said, full respect, Colchester Arts Centre. I'm hoping to get to a few more gigs there. It was really good, and £5.50 a pint these days. I think that's decent.
Oh, I suppose at a gig that's
fucking right.
And if it's a pint, because that's the thing, sometimes see him pour a can into a pint, it just feels wrong.
Oh no, and it was
actual pint. It's like, okay, right.
It is actually. That's a bit skeevy.
Especially when we were at Maiden at the O2, it was £7.75 for a can of beer or £8.50 for an actual pint. Just soak that in. £7.75 for a can of beer. I think it was Budweiser as well. So even worse.
I see. I don't know what's wrong with this country sometimes, because like when I saw Guns N' Roses in Rome, a bottle of like Nastro Azzurro or Peroni which is not the best beer, it's like €2.50. I don't know why. I mean, yes, they've got to make a profit, and it's price gouging as well to some extent. But I think it's a case of that we just tolerate it.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, because we assume it's just the way. And while we continue to buy beer at gigs or whatever, it's always going to be the case, and it's never going to change.
There is a
queue at the bar.
Yeah, there is an argument. I mean, it would take a lot to argue, and I'm not very good at it, but there's a suggestion that Brits have been an oppressed nation, but in a very, very different way. Centuries of imperialism and feudalism has kind of almost made us just shrug our shoulders and go, oh, well, this is it. This is our lot. Might as well just be grateful we're at least in a slight democracy and just put up with every stupid price and nonsense that goes on. I mean, the country's falling apart. Nothing works. Schools are falling down.
Schools are literally falling down. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Schools are falling down now. And so the Tories are just shrugging their shoulders and going, well, but people just don't give a shit.
But they want it to fall down because then they can go, right, see, we told you, government can't run anything. Let's privatise it. That's basically what it is. No, it is. It's like, yep, see, government inefficient. Well, it's inefficient if you just sit there watching it burn. It's like Nero watching Rome burn, playing the fiddle, going, see, I told you, fire hazard. See, can't put it out.
We're going off topic a little bit.
No, I'm not going that. No.
I mean, it's like, what about privatizing? Like, if we or maybe nationalizing, I think would be the best way. The heavy metal music industry.
You know what? I was waiting for you to say something along those lines. I didn't know whether you were going to go nationalize heavy metal or privatize heavy metal.
No, nationalize because it's a national treasure, right?
Oh,
I'd like to see, a minister for metal sit in the cabinet, right? And then we'd obviously have deputy ministers for each subgenre. So, deputy minister for thrash, deputy minister for grindcore, etc., etc. And like, under them, they'd have, they would fund metal bands, deliver on, rehearsal space and music venues just for metal though, because that's, we don't want anything else. Maybe there's a room for some like, electronic music, but no pop music. British pop music's dead. It's shit.
Who's going to sit at the top of this nationalised metal scene?
Well, I don't know, but one of us would have to run for parliament.
Well, of course. That's obviously going to be you. I'm not.
No, technically, obviously, you could probably, if you made Tony Iommi a life peer, put him in the House of Lords, then he could like run it. He could then sit on the cabinet.
I tell you what, it would be some fucking House of Lords. The people you would have in that House of Lords, Iommi, Ozzy, you'd have David Coverdale, you'd have Jimmy Page. You'd just be endless. Bruce Dickinson, Steve Harris, Rob Halford, you'd have them all.
Yeah, but I don't think you're going to get them in the same party though. Dickinson, Coverdale as well. I reckon Coverdale's got Tory tendencies.
No,
I don't know. No, he can't. He's from Barnsley. He's from Barnsley.
No, that doesn't mean anything.
No, I don't.
That doesn't mean anything.
From what I've seen of him, he's not a Tory.
Okay, Page definitely is.
That's probably more likely.
Yeah, he grew up in Epsom, so I used to live 2 doors down from that house. So
I'm sorry, Dickinson. I'm not sure.
Oh, he's a Tory.
Yeah, he's
definitely a Tory.
He's a Tory, but a law unto himself. And if he was to be in any kind of political debate, it would go on for fucking days. So I'm not sure you'd want to be involved.
He's more of a Disraeli, like a One Nation Tory. He's probably a more acceptable Tory than, say, the new Defence Minister Grant Shapps. What the fuck is that about? Sorry, that's my last word.
The one thing you can guarantee is that whatever point Steve Harris made, Bruce Dickinson would disagree with it. So, that would be your political arguments, and it would go on for years and years and years.
You can just imagine the opening of Parliament.
Scream for me, Parliament. Actually, yeah, Bruce would make a good Speaker of the House. I think that would keep him out of the way.
Oh,
yeah. Well, anyway, look, moving on. There was something that we've been sort of loosely discussing this week amongst the three of us, because I noticed this week that that Job for a Cowboy are back. Going off on a bit of a tangent here, but and it brought up the conversation around deathcore, and then we clearly got on to our very own voice of reason and his views on deathcore. So I mean, I'll let you carry on, because you've clearly got issues with it. I'm not entirely sure why or what.
Well, I've officially concluded I can't fucking stand deathcore, basically.
Well, you need to get off the fence and actually have an opinion.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where I'm thinking, what am I missing? What is there something? Because normally with metal and all this different subgenres and sounds, there's various bands I can get into and enjoy, even if I don't infuse about a particular offshoot, whatever. But some of these deathcore bands have been around for years, and they were knocking around 15 years ago, and they were probably part of that batch of what I thought at the time were metalcore bands, were MySpace metalcore bands trying to play death metal riffs. But it was all very polished and very bit too cathartic. There was no joy in it, kind of thing, and it was either whinging or just anger for the sake of being angry. And I think that's kind of what diminished my enthusiasm for listening to new bands, because that's what it all seemed to be, all this deathcore stuff. And I think further down the line here, I'm a bit older, I'm a smidgen bit wiser. I got back into metal properly. I've really sort of thrown myself back into it, and I'm hearing these bands and seeing them in the news for different reasons. And honestly, I still cannot get into them. And they're heavy. There's riffs there, but I don't know. I mean, for me, it feels like it's supposed to be a mix of death metal and hardcore, but it just feels like it's for the least appealing elements of both. You've got the less technical, less dynamic elements of death metal, and the I suppose, the less positive, less triumphant aspects of hardcore, just for basic beat downs and really basic sort of structures that almost easy to sort of come up with. And yeah, I'm looking through the band list on Wikipedia of all these apparently deathcore bands. There's only one that I vaguely like, and that's Shadow of Intent. So they're more the mellow death band for me. So
yeah, when I was sort of diddling around in the deathcore archives, that name did come up, but then I wouldn't pin them as a deathcore band. I mean, for me, deathcore is like I said, Job for a Cowboy, or Job for a Cunt, as I've got written in my notes.
Yeah, you called, yeah, because we reviewed their album back in the day, and I think I gave it like 2 out of 5. 10.
That's probably where it came from. Yeah, them like Whitechapel and Oceano, All Shall Perish, those kind of things. That's deathcore for me, and I agree with you. There's nothing likable about the majority of it, and I can't pinpoint why, because I should like it. But that point you make, that it's the worst parts of the two fused genres, that's probably about right. It's basically the offal, isn't it, from the prime cuts? This is just what's left over.
Yeah,
that's what it feels like.
Some people like offals, but there is a little bit of technical bit here and there kind of thing. So some riffery, as it were, and I can do catharsis, but what am I missing? I like it heavy, and I like riffs, but what is it? And then there seems to be sort of dodgy opinions by vocalists and members popping up more regularly than other sort of areas, and it's just, there's something about it. And help me out.
Yeah, it's CJ McMahon from Thy Art Is Murder has made a tit of himself this week, hasn't he, with some ill-advised comments.
Yeah.
And he's since taken himself off social media and all sorts.
Yeah, there's some sort of obvious bigotry there, and also the bloke who fronts Slaughter to Prevail.
Alex Terrible, or Alex the Terrible. Yeah.
He probably considers himself to be a professional troll as well, but it's just.
But so there's someone in a band called Alex the Terrible.
Yeah, and he's Russian.
But he had, I think he's covered it up now, but he had one of those sun wheel tattoos on his elbow.
Yeah.
So it's like, he spoke out.
What's he suggesting, that he's in the Russian mafia?
I don't know.
He said, I wouldn't need to be a bit careful, because I don't know exactly what he said. All I know is his comments were along the lines of children being brainwashed into convincing themselves that they might be transgender or homosexual or whatever it means. But I don't know exactly what was said, because a lot of what's been out in the press has been taken down. So
yeah, no, I saw the post, and it seemed to be a bit like double Dutch, just with gobbledygook.
Yeah.
It made me, but it just came across as unpleasant, and like, I can understand why people are calling you a bigot, and it's, I don't know. I mean, that's alleged. It's all alleged, but it's just, it just makes me think, right? Well, I know you can try and separate the art from the artist, but I've not really liked what I've heard from this genre. So
yeah, see, there's separating the art from the artist when the artist is a bit of a tit, and then there's when they just come across as a complete cunt, for want of a better word. But it's difficult, because sometimes some of these comments can be taken out of context, or they may not have intended to say what came across, heat of the moment stuff. You've got to be so careful when you're putting stuff out on the internet, especially if it ends up in print. You can't hide from it. Even if it's a head in the hands moment, I think, fuck, I really shouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
The best thing is just to talk about the weather and keep it simple. So whatever he said this week, CJ McMahon, the gist I got, it was awful.
Oh, it was deeply unpleasant. Yeah. It was banging out of order. Whatever opinions you might have on the subject, it's like there's a line you don't cross, and he fucking crossed it. And the band straight up said, we stand with people. We are, that's
yeah.
what our band is like, and he's taken himself. So he's don't know what kind of word they had with him, but
yeah, and it must be fucking difficult for the rest of the band in that situation because you just think, oh, you absolute fucking bellend.
Yeah,
because you can just destroy a reputation just like that, and it's not really fair on the rest of the band. It's not the first time kind of things happened, but it's
but yeah, it's just it seems, I don't know, it just feels like a very nasty sort of subgenre, which I can gain some sort of, I don't want to say positivity, but some sort of escapism with everything else in metal, even death metal. You think of your gore metal and your brutal death metal, it's ridiculous, but there's a kind of like a band like Gutalax. It's we saw. And,
well, you only have to look at the photos of Corpse Grinder and the Cuddly Toys.
Yeah, exactly, and even black metal. I mean, whatever, but there's something there that I think is joyful to them. But yeah, I don't know. Deathcore just seems to bring a very nasty vibe, which I've always struggled to really click with. And musically, like I say, it just feels stunted.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know. Well, I'll give anyone a go and whatnot, and maybe there's just certain bands I need to try a bit harder with. But it's just one of those things. I just thought, what am I missing? What is it? What's the appeal?
It's another one of those things where I almost want to like some of it because some of the t-shirts, the merch, really cool.
Yeah,
some of them have got some great logos. So I want to be involved in this, but I can't. Lorna Shore, another one. I suppose they've got a little bit more of, because they've obviously got synths and stuff in there as well. But for me, they're a deathcore band, and watching them at Bloodstock last year, no, don't get it. Don't get the mass appeal about that band. I really don't. Not that we're not obviously we're not trying to point out that anybody in a deathcore band is a bit of a bigot. Quite the opposite. But
no.
It's just unfortunate that two comments made by members of deathcore bands within a very short space of time. It just kind of puts things in the in the foreground, doesn't it? And it's a bit unfortunate. It is what it is. I won't be listening to a great deal. I've tried with bands like Thy Art Is Murder because when they first came along, there was a lot of hype and a lot of fuss about them and whatnot. And they tour quite well in the UK. They seem to be a pretty hard-working band, but there's no fucking songs, is there? That's what it.
Yeah.
We talked about it. There's no tunes, no hooks.
Yeah, I'm old school. I like songs. Even if it's nasty and brutal and fast and there. I still like songs.
Yeah, and you can achieve that. There's plenty of bands out there that are achieving that. You've got some proper rough and ready stuff that's just got, the bands have just got demos. Bands like Mutagenic Host, British band, this proper rough 4-track demo, and it's got hooks. It can be done. So, and
I'm always a bit, I think when you put core on the end of a subgenre title, it's always like kind of reminds me of like kind of fad cuisines when you've got like fusion restaurants, and they'll take, oh, this is a Hawaiian fusion with Afro-Kenyan food or whatever it is. I don't know. It's like you're taking something good and go, right, let's just add loads of chilies to it and we'll call it something else. It's just like it's an amalgamation of things for the sake of it, and I don't think it's necessarily organic. And I'm not saying that's with all like grindcore, metalcore. Well, it's not everything, but I think in this case it's, and I haven't listened to any of this stuff, but I put faith in what you guys are saying. It just doesn't sound like it's got any merit to it.
No, I mean, from a musical ability point of view and all that lot, some of it you can understand. It takes a fair amount of talent to play it. I get all that, but I suppose it all depends what you want out of heavy metal. Like I said at the start of this episode, we're grumpy old farts, and we want hooks and songs and the things that we remember as kids when we first started listening to heavy metal. And that when I first heard bands like Cannibal Corpse and things like that, I thought it was just noise. A lot of death metal, And it's over the years that I've developed more of a taste for extreme music. Probably bands like In Flames in the early days were one of those that pushed me down that route. And that then makes it kind of opens your ears a little bit then, doesn't it, to other things. But yeah, deathcore is one that's just never caught on for me. I don't quite get it.
And again, I feel one thing I again don't like about it is it's still quite polished.
Yeah,
it always feels very pristine,
well, almost overproduced.
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I like something that's a bit clean at times, but I also like the rawness of metal. It's when it's got that balance, and I don't get rawness from metalcore. It feels like it's trying too hard. All the tattoos, all the look.
Yeah,
it just feels a bit contrived.
Do you know what is raw though? 99% of the music on Dying Victims.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we ever since last year, I think Raptore was the first band that kind of came up on this podcast, but ever since then, we've had a bit of a mild obsession with Dying Victims. If anybody doesn't know, German-based underground metal label, strictly old school, strictly metal, with the odd exception here and there, but basically it's strictly studs, leather, steel, bullet belts, questionable facial hair, NHS glasses, the full works in it. And we absolutely fucking love it.
I mean, I've said that for many, many years, my favourite period of music, popular music, whatever, is 1976 to 1986. And that's for everything. That's not just metal and rock. That's punk and all the offshoots, the pop of that era, but also the electronic and the disco and dance kind of stuff. You got
to throw post-punk in there as well, haven't you?
Yeah, well, yeah, like I say, punk plus and everything that.
Yeah.
That 10-year period, I'll listen to it and I'll enjoy it. It's very rare that I'll get displeasure from anything from that period. It's so fertile. There's so much going on. Politically, anthropologically, it's amazing. But like I say, if you think of the metal and the rock and the hard rock and stuff, this is that period. They're not trying to be progressive or innovative, and that's absolutely fine, because you know what, there's loads of that about. They just want new bands celebrating that period, and that's why, for me, it's a fucking great label.
They are keeping it true, is what they're doing. Well, it's pretty much just one man, Florian, who I sort of email back and forth every now and then, and we get all their advanced releases, which we really appreciate, but we've never really got around to actually talking about some of these releases and some of these bands in any great detail, and I feel like we almost have a duty to deliver the goods to people because there's some fucking great stuff on this label. There really is. It really is the gift that keeps on giving. And you never know what you look at an album artwork and you think, that might be trad metal, and then it just turns out to be pure thrash. And
there's just stuff. If it was pushed a bit more, if it had a bit more exposure, there'd be so many more fans.
Well, it's on the continent. It's on the mainland Europe. It's fine. It's us in the UK. We just don't seem to get this stuff. I don't understand why, because this is what we spawned in the first place. Yeah,
it's weird. And I don't know if it's a generational thing or, the old schoolers who might listen to it. Oh, well, we're happy with the old bands we've got. We're not bothered about new bands. Oh, hang on, they sound like them from 1984. Why do we want to listen to them? That kind of attitude. And of course, younger people might think, nah, it's too old school. And yeah, it's going to appeal to some people, absolutely. But it's just, yeah.
But it's done properly as well. Like virtually every album, I've got a feeling almost every album is released on vinyl as well. It's the full.
Eventually,
you get the full experience. Yeah. It might take a while. It might not happen at the same time. There's been a few that are now, starting to drop, but generally it does all come out on vinyl, and that we know, we've talked about it before. Vinyl's in a proper riding the crest of a wave at the moment, but it's still a huge expense for a label to pick that up, and a big responsibility to take that on. for all these bands that, and you might, especially when you might sell fuck all, but they all seem to sell. You know, the stuff's hard to get hold of after the initial release. It's then hard to get hold of. So there's got to be something good in there. So, look, some of the recent releases we talk about, this Atonement are one I think we need to talk about, because you pointed out a couple of days ago they're all fucking teenagers.
Yeah, I didn't realise. Yeah, they did the demo in 2021. They're all 16 years old apparently.
Fucking mental.
And absolutely it's just mental. Yeah, I mean, this is it's a good debut. It's not certainly been one of my favourite releases from the label, but it's just solid, fast, nasty sounding speed metal. It's got enough hooks just to draw you in. For production, very balanced. It's raw, but it's not so raw it puts you off. I love the album cover. I mean, I'm sort of
the album cover is amazing. It's amazing.
That large Satan in chains I pointed out, that's definitely from a Doctor Who episode. So that drew me in straight away. But yeah, like you say, they're well, like I said, they're 18, 19 years old, and fuck.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. So they weren't even alive in the 90s, let alone the fucking 80s.
Yeah, that's the thing. And that's the thing. When you hear people like that making music that is just so authentically early 80s to a T, it's just, you clearly love what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you know what you want to do. And that's a gist you get from pretty much all of the bands on this label. Whether or not you're into them, you can appreciate that from all of them. And
authenticity.
Another
one that came out in August, but I think this is a re-release, if I'm right. You probably know, Misconception by Critical Defiance.
Now, I've not given that enough attention, I'm afraid, because what I've done this year in preparation for this episode is I've tried to make a point of listening to every brand new release this year, digitally or otherwise, just because, again, I want to keep on top and give every band a chance. So I think there's a couple of releases that have been put on physical so far, and I think that's one. So I've not really given it a chance just yet. But
yeah, I have, and it's thrash. There's no doubt about that. There might be a little bit of crossover in there, but it is thrash, and it is balls out, relentless fucking thrash. But it's just that little bit more aggressive than sort of like the speed metal stuff that is on this label. But it's, again, similar to the Atonement album. It's got that gritty production that keeps everything nice and raw, but you can still kind of make out everything clearly. I
think The Last Crusaders is a good song. Also Kill Them With Kindness. And I agree with you about the production. There's some of the stuff on that label is, I think, is quite intense, and it's very fast, but it's not gritty. Some of the production is not gritty enough. And what I mean, like, if I'm going to listen to thrash metal, then kind of the production I'm looking for is, going back to the last week's episode, something along the lines of, I say, Killing Is My Business or Ride the Lightning. That's the kind of sound that I think lends itself well to that genre or subgenre. But it's all good. I mean, I just put the entire record label material on Spotify into one playlist, and I'm still working my way through a lot of it. But I thought that
there's a lot of music. There's a lot. You've got about 10 years worth of releases to get through, so there's a lot.
I mean, I've got so far on this one. I've got over about 220 different songs. But there's Critical Defiance were one of the bands that really made me kind of stop and just think, okay, what's that? So I'll make sure I like that one. So, but yeah, Aggressive Perfector were good.
Yeah, well,
Onward to the Cemetery.
We should talk a little bit about Aggressive Perfector, because they're English, so that's quite a big deal. And I've just picked up the album Havoc at the Midnight Hour. Ironically, this is the first band I heard that were on Dying Victims, but I wasn't really aware of the label at the time. But the artwork to Havoc at the Midnight Hour is just incredible.
Yeah. I mean, it is. It's it's a film post, pretty much a film poster from a Lucio Fulci horror movie. Absolutely bang on for me, and it sounds like a metal band in a Fulcio movie.
Yeah, it fits perfectly with the vibe of the album.
Yes, Slayer, nasty Slayer-ish, Merciful Fate, evil sounding, old school heavy metal, and heavy.
Like the organ on Onward to the Cemetery is pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's things like that. It's adding those merciful fateisms, like Ant just said, and it just gives this kind of stuff a completely different. Yeah. That's it. Atmosphere. It just offers something completely different. And if I'm sure Aggressive Perfecta are a 3-piece as well, which makes them even cooler.
Oh
Yeah. So speed metal power trio. What more do you want?
I mean, the other ones for me, like I'm on a bit of a doomsday kick this week.
Yeah, but they're not dying victims, so they could wait till next week.
Well, I accidentally put them on the playlist, but I just needed to mention that band because that's phenomenal stuff. I'm really liking that at the minute.
To be fair, that EP is quality, and so is the previous one.
No, just all of it. Just the whole, every single song. I'm just saying it's great. I mean, it's especially Attaining Heaven by Force, which I think is great. Depths of the Abyss is also a fantastic song. And also the Dead Heat albums. Tears of the Wolf.
The last Dead Heat EP I really like. I wasn't so keen on the stuff that came before. It sort of bored me a little bit, but
it was all right.
But I get what you mean. This one is
definitely it's them finding their feet. They seem to have found it on this album. And obviously Celestial Sanctuary.
Yeah.
Well,
anyway, they're not dying victims, so
yeah, you can wait till next week to have your say on those. That's we're a bit too early for rounding up August, but
I think we want to talk about a recent album as well, and the scale of them. Well, actually, there's a couple of albums from last month, or no, not last month, July. Christ, July/August. And one album is Flight, Echoes of Future Past, or Echoes of Journeys Past. Sorry, Flight.
Which doesn't really fit the normal mold, does it?
Well, you say that, but you got bands like Free Road as well, and they do knock out these basically 70s hard rock bands who've got the sort of hippie vibe. I mean, again, not normally my thing. I'm more, as much as I like the late 70s, I'm confused about the 80s more. But Flight have got this kind of Blue Oyster Cult, Wishbone Ash vibe, little bit of Rush there as well. And I really liked this album, actually. This was quite a refreshing listen. You can put it on background.
We reviewed it back at the start of the year, didn't we? We had it for quite a while.
Free Road, we did, yeah.
Free Road, yeah.
No, I'm talking about Flight, the one that came out in the last 6 weeks. Same sort of vibe, a bit less. I don't know, trucker, shall I say? It's a bit more, it's a bit more hippie. But yeah, like I say, Blue Oyster Cult, Wishbone Ash kind of vibe. But again, very retro and old school, but quite a pleasant sounding album, I thought. So they do stuff like that, but also, and I know they're not on the label, but they've distributed them. A band called The Night Eternal.
The previous Night Eternal album was on Dying Victims, but the new one, the one that came out a couple of months ago, if that wasn't. But I think you're right. They distributed it in Europe, but even so,
Fatal, yeah, we didn't do a July roundup, did we? Because we suck. So
we do.
But that was one of my favourites from July. And again, we're talking classic heavy metal, but with that sort of slightly gothic, the cult vibe. Bit of death rock, a little bit of a Mission kind of thing, but still very metal. Merciful Fate and New Wobbling in style. And German band, great songs, great hooks, just an enjoyable vibe, even though it's quite gothy and whatnot. And decent production, not so raw, not trying to be so obscure. Like we were popular in 1983 in Belgium only, that kind of thing. It's yeah, and that's the thing is you've got bands like that amongst all of the others that are just sort of trying to break the speed barrier.
It's creating an atmosphere, isn't it? Which the way some of these albums are produced, it's quite clever. If you think of like Visions of a Parallel World by Speedhall, which we talked about a couple of months back.
Yeah.
That like first listen was like, not sure about this, but then I started to get into it and it made more sense. And that sounds like it was recorded in the depths of a cave, but it completely makes sense.
Big echo on that kind of thing, you know. It gave that
but
sort
it
of
works, doesn't it?
Yeah. That had a good balance production. I thought it was raw, but it wasn't raw enough, and it just fit the sound they were going for. Whereas I think other bands might have been a bit too raw for me and my tastes.
Oh well, you know, well, Hell Crash.
Well,
we covered that earlier in the year as well, which you know I adore that album. I thought it was just fucking great fun. Demonic Assassination, and again, full respect for the artwork, which is just unreal. Italy's finest, as far as I'm concerned. I don't think there's anything better coming out of that country. But don't forget, you got some more polished stuff in there as well. I mean, you had Might and Power by Megaton Sword.
Oh, of course, yeah.
That's a Dying Victims release as well.
Yeah,
and
I forget. It's weird. It doesn't feel like a Dying Victims record.
It doesn't.
Maybe
and they're a very polarizing band as well. That album got quite a few sort of poor reviews, but I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah. It's not like a classic to me. There's a couple of tracks I don't think are as good as the rest of the album, but some of the tracks on that album I just love. It just works. It's very distinctive. This sort of mid-paced kind of theatrical, like you say, Manowar meets Ghost kind of thing.
Yeah, that's where we put it, wasn't it? But there is an iffy ballad on the album, isn't there? Is it called Babe Eternal or something like that? I think.
Yeah.
There was not so sure about that, but I kind of enjoy it, but it doesn't really fit with the rest of the album. They could have lopped that one off. But Monoliths of Wrath by Lucifuge, that was another one I really enjoyed this year, which was really early Slayer. You know, again, all very leather and studs and all that, which I can't get enough of. There was a thrash album that came out quite earlier in the year, Into the Void by Traz Torned.
Yeah.
That was another great one. So just this year alone, there's been some absolute bangers off that.
That's it. You know, and I make a point, like I say, of listening to every band on Bandcamp at least once. You know, there was an album by a band called, again, hard rock band called Firmament, which I wasn't too sure about on first listen, but sounded a bit better on second. But yeah, it's not as interesting as Flight or Free Road. Not quite there for me. But you know, I know they've had a lot of praise. But yeah, in terms of this year, there's a few EPs dotted about I'm not quite listening to. There was a band called Running Maiden who released an EP earlier in the year, which again, dark new album style I liked at the time.
And we have to look back to last year as well. I mean, look, Blackfire by Raptore was in my top 10 last year.
Yeah.
Loved that album. We had Nico from the band on the podcast earlier this year who was, you know, considering, you know, he kept saying that his English wasn't great. I thought he was brilliant. It was, you know, so nice, so good to hear a story of someone, you know, travels from Argentina to Europe and they kept putting their music out to all these different labels and, you know, and Dying Victims come along and they pick them up and they get a great album out of it. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do next.
That's the thing. It is a great album. It's just proper, no nonsense, heavy metal, but it's fast. It's anthemic. It's choruses. Got lots of got choruses. It's hooky. It's well produced. It's a kind of album you think you could be on a bigger label, and that's no disrespect to Dying Victims at all. You know, the fact they put it out and they grabbed it is great, but they sound like they could be on Century Media or Nuclear Blast. Yeah,
it was probably one of the more polished releases that the Dying Victims have had recently. Another one was Echoes from the Gutter by Venator.
Yes,
and who we I think we first picked up on when we were doing a New Wattam episode. and it was in particular there was one particular photo on there, the combination of the facial hair and the dodgy NHS glasses.
Yeah, it was the moustaches. Austrian, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah. But they've got more of a Saxon feel to them, I think. Venator, they were a different sound again, and again, just songs absolutely full of hooks, and
Yeah.
where it's mad how Dying Victims find these bands.
Yeah,
That's what I find crazy.
One album again. I missed it at the time, but I've been listening to it this week, and it also came out last year. Is by a French band called Animalize.
Yeah, I never really got a chance to listen to this.
Yeah, that's the album's called Meat We're Made Of, and they some songs in French, others are in English, but that's a really good album. Again, it's just traditional heavy metal, but it's got a very full sounding production. There's a warmth there to it, even though it's quite raw and fast and whatnot. Hooks, choruses, it's got a bit of heft to it. And the singer, funnily enough, he reminds me of the dude from Gamma Bomb. He's got that
that's obscure.
Yeah, he's got that sort of crazy kind of vibe to it, but it works amongst all the albums. So I want to keep an eye on them. And if I can pick up the album whilst I'm in Paris on vinyl, I will, because
Sacre bleu.
Yeah.
I mean, we're reeling off a lot of bands, a lot of albums here, but there is a playlist, like Padre said, and the link is on our link tree on all our socials and everything. So if you're not familiar with Dying Victims, go and listen to that playlist, and it'll give you an idea of what the label does. Do you think? I mean, the label's been around for a fair few years now, but do you think there's a longevity in this? Because traditional metal is, I wouldn't say popular, but it is in the forefront of underground metal at the moment. Do you think there's longevity for a label like this to carry on doing this, or will they need to sort of shift slightly? Or I don't know.
It's difficult to say, really, because we don't know what the future holds, do we? The fact that, I mean, if you look at just the amount of stuff they've put out in the last few years, especially during COVID, I mean, if you can do stuff during that period and keep it going, then why not? But it all comes down to the interest. I don't know what was it, say Florian.
Florian's name.
Is it? Yeah. I mean, it feels like if it's just a one man thing, then it must be a full time for him. And he manages just to do everything accordingly. So, but it sounds like he's got to have enough bands involved for it to be worth doing full time. If he was going to expand, the only way that would happen is if some of these bands actually started doing quite well. And as we say, they're all a bit too niche, really, to make it big. But you know what it's like with these labels. All you need is one band to break.
That's true.
You can imagine a band like Ghost being on a label like Dying Victims historically, and they step up a level. That's it. And we know it's the same. A great comparison is films. I mean, New Line Cinema they just distributed films back in the early 80s. They didn't really have any sort of profile at all, but then they distributed a film called Nightmare on Elm Street, and that was it. That that they're now known as the label that Freddie built or something like that.
Yeah.
That's it. They, of course, they went into other things. They ended up sort of doing the Lord of the Rings, didn't they?
Yeah.
But it's kind of like that. You just need one artist to make you. Mute had Depeche Mode, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
It's like Napoli signing Maradona.
Yeah.
You just need that one. You just need that one piece. No, but I think you're right. Yeah, if they need one of their bands to break through and then expose all the other bands on that label, so they don't necessarily, the band that breaks through doesn't necessarily have to change their sound, but they have to just come up with something that's just absolutely killer. I think the other thing as well, they need to the bands on the label, they need the exposure. They need to be playing festivals.
Well, see that's the case on mainland Europe, because Dying Victims have got their own festival, which next year's in Essen, which has just moved up to a bigger venue as well. So there's clearly a demand for that, called Dying Victims Attacks, and it's like mostly Dying Victims vans plus a few guests from around the world. But that's getting bigger. You've got festivals like Keep It True, and you've got some of the other sort of smaller metal festivals scattered around Europe. Then you've got your Summer Breeze and Metal Days and obviously Wacken and things like that. They all feature a lot of these types of bands. So on mainland Europe, there's always going to be an opportunity for them. It's outside of that where a lot of these bands may struggle, in particular the UK, like I said 10 minutes ago. And it's not fucking fair. It's just not fucking fair. Some of these bands, that if they just got a smidgen of an opportunity, I think some of them could have a big following in the UK. Look at what we've got in the UK at the moment. You look at bands like Inhuman Nature, for instance. They would be just as at home on Dying Victims as they would on any other label. And they're fucking British. So, and they are building a following, by taking good support slots and they'll fucking play anywhere and do anything. So that's what it's all about. If they can do it, I don't see why some of these bands can't. Obviously, Brexit hasn't helped. Coming into the UK from mainland Europe and whatnot, that obviously hasn't helped. But I can't see any of these bands playing shows in the UK anytime soon.
I mean, I don't know. I'm guessing for most of these bands, it's not a full-time thing at all. I mean,
no.
They're all part-timers, aren't they? So,
yeah.
And I think the fact that they're all just doing something, almost fun and retro. They're not trying to break boundaries. They're not trying to push musical innovation. So there's clearly I don't think there's an intent to have a full-time career out of it. And there's no disrespect to that at all. It's you don't have to be doing something full-time in order to be bloody great at it.
That's being in a metal band these days, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's a very different sort of setup, isn't it? It's just like I say, Florian's the only person doing it full-time. They're a whole network. So I don't know. I mean, it comes down to all the time you've got bands who want to be doing that stuff, and he's willing to keep doing it. It'll continue, but it's weird because I think there's no reason why it can't, because we're kind of past the point where that sort of period is dare I say it, embarrassing, because you're all the same age as me. We all agree that during the 90s, the 80s was anathema culturally.
Yeah.
I mean, when I got into Maiden first in the sixth form, the grief I got, it wasn't horrible, but it was like, you're into 80s stuff. Nobody listens to 80s stuff. That's just not the done thing now.
Yeah.
1996. Anything like that was just, the music, the fashions, the politics. It was just a different world by that point. And musically, fun enough, it was only in 2001 when the Strokes came along that this whole idea of retro 80s type sounding bands started to become acceptable to music journalists and that kind of scene. And I think, that's after that. That's when you had bands that were a bit more rock here and there, and I think metal almost had a sort of leg up. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to credit the Strokes for that. I just think the time came. We're into a new decade, and certain attitudes about the 80s kind of just started to reduce, and people thought, actually, you know what, there was some good stuff back then and we can enjoy it again. And that kind of and I think that's stuck ever since, because we're well past that period where that stuff's looked back as weird, as embarrassing, because it's immediate. Kids, anything in the past, anything pre-2000 is retro to kids these days. There's going to be
thanks for making me feel old.
Sorry, that's it. So there's going to be kids. I mean, Christ, you look at the 80s, in terms of music and films and TV, and again, Stranger Things is a big example. Your kids fucking love Stranger Things.
They do.
It's such a distinctive period when it comes to pop culture, and it's always going to appeal to kids. And I think there's a lot of kids who these days, with the internet and culture generally who zero in on that kind of stuff because it's almost refreshing. And yeah, you know what, that's it's big and colourful and exciting, but it's also simpler. And I think all the time you've got attitudes like that from younger people, potentially, yeah, about a label like Dying Victims can stick around because there's always going to be a demand.
And I think that's the perfect, almost the perfect part in shop, really, is that, and again, something we've talked about before. If there's a scene, the music will always be there, and if there's the music, the scene will be there as well. One way or another, everything kind of comes together. So if labels like Dying Victims just keep on doing this, we as metal fans are always gonna lap it up. We always will, and labels like this that, like I said, I'm not sure if Florian does it all by himself. I don't know, but if he does, he's doing a fucking amazing job in the process, and to almost sort of single-handedly keep doing this, it's incredible. And look, there are other labels out there as well. Another one is Shadow Kingdom, who've given us some great releases this year. Leather bitch. And look, Cruel Force and Bloodstar early in the year. Again, all a similar kind of vein to this, very retro, late 70s, early 80s. And it's just so much fun. It's just refreshing. There's no sort of poserisms to it. It's just good fun. You can enjoy it without any kind of extra connotations that shouldn't be there. It's just bands like Exciter, for instance, are currently playing all over the fucking world. And you can imagine that 35 years ago, if you said to Exciter that in 2023 you're still going to be playing 50, 60, 70 date US and Canada tours and playing in Europe and the UK, they'd laugh at you. Canadian speed metal, who's going to be into that in 2023? But here we are. So look, happy days. The longer it goes on, the better.
Bring back Sword.
Yeah, what happened to that?
Yeah, I don't know, but we want them back.
Yeah, they were good.
Yeah,
they were fucking good. The first album, especially, was just unreal. Yeah, just
really pleasing sound and production on that.
Oh, fuck it, I completely forgot about them.
It was just mainstream enough.
Yeah,
but they could have been big, but just metal enough to keep.
Yeah, but look, we hope Dying Victims carry on doing it anyway because we love it. Every release that comes out, I like wicked. It's another new Dying Victims release. What's it going to be like?
I haven't listened to it yet, but I know in my box I got waiting for me in a couple of months. We got the new the debut album by Savage.
That Glory Riders.
Yeah, Glory Riders. They're German. I mean that artwork is it's very do it yourself. The band in a burning city, but I mean, look, it's Wasp. I mean, the singer's got the best Blackie Lawless impression I've ever heard. But great,
I listened to a couple of songs. It is very Wasp.
It's enjoyable. They know what they're doing. They know. There's no shame to that at all, and it's great fun. It's just enjoyable metal.
Yeah, which is
that's what we want.
Yeah, which is what we want. And for all the wonderful stuff that's been out this year, bands like fucking Earn, which is album of the year, it's not going to be beaten. Going back to this stuff is always great. So, and look, on that note, next week we have to talk about August because you're right, we didn't even do July because, Bloodstock got in the way and whatnot. And look, July wasn't the strongest month.
July was sparse.
There wasn't a great deal.
Look, I've noticed this actually. Funny enough, looking at K-Man's list, the last couple of weeks have been much bigger. Was July and August?
Yeah,
they were like 25 to 30 albums each week. It was quiet in comparison to the rest of the year.
A couple that did stand out in July. Obviously, Night Eternal. We spoke about that. Calligram's Position Momentum, I really enjoyed that. Tail Gunner, we know about that. There was Survival of the Fittest by Thelemite, which was a little bit, but I quite enjoyed that one.
Yeah, that was weird because obviously there's some of the stuff on that I did like, and obviously clearly they like Defenders of the Faith era Judas Priest.
Just a little bit, yeah.
thing. But yeah, I mean, we disagreed on a song. There was one song I thought it was like one of the worst songs I've ever heard.
Oh, it was called Making Love or
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
you liked it. I thought it was bloody awful. But
Let me just get this straight. I liked it purely from an ironic point of view. I fully agree that it's a terrible song, but it just it just makes me think of Joe Elliott talking about making love like a man kind of thing. It's
well, we
but
we did mention the gateway.
I didn't need that image in my head,
especially not these days.
No. Yeah, well, I think we do just need to do a quick mention of the Gateway album. Belgian artist. He released an artist called Galgan Dude, which is it was Death Doom, but I'm not normally a Death Doom fan, but this is one of the sort of most distinctive Death Doom albums I've ever heard.
Is it Death Doom or Doom Death?
Oh, it's Deathy Doomy Death. I don't know, whatever. But it was just so thick and enveloping and just filthy and low end and just really distinctive. And it's like 30 minutes. And yeah, I liked that album.
I couldn't get into that.
No?
No, and I saw a lot of you raving about it, and it didn't really didn't click for me. I'll go back and try again, but
I mean,
it didn't click that one.
Yeah, that's a shame. But yeah,
that was about it for July, wasn't it? August is a very different story.
August was better.
There's been some great stuff out in August.
Yeah.
So, like Padre said, New Celestial Sanctuary that anybody listening to this is going to be well aware of. Yes, that Doomsday EP is a fucking absolute banger, and yeah, Cruel Force, Orbit Culture, even the new Alice Cooper. We'll talk about it in more detail next week, but I think it's been one of the strongest months of the year so far. So yeah, but we'll pick that up next week. Anyway, thanks for listening this week. It's been a bit of positive, bit of negative, bit of grumpy, bit of moaning, a little bit of politics. It's been one of those episodes that we haven't done for a long time, so it's been fun.
Back to normal, basically, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. We are going to we don't quite know what's happened with the Holy Man, actually, because he is off to be a Middle Eastern queen soon, so we don't know if we're going to lose him for a little bit or what, but fear not, fans of the priest, I'm sure he'll be back. Well, what's going to happen?
Well, I mean, I'm flying on the 17th, so I mean, I'll be there. I'm going to be in Bahrain for the first couple of days, getting my visa, and then obviously schmoozing with the royal family.
Of course.
And then I should be available the 23rd, so I'll be there. So we've got the guitar players from Tail Gunner on the 16th,
yeah. Rhea from Tail Gunner's coming on that week, and we should have another guest that episode as well. So, or maybe we won't lose you then. Maybe but obviously being in the Middle East, we're not fucking changing our plans for you traveling all over the fucking world. You're gonna have to shift. You can't.
I mean, you might not need to.
It's fine. It's like Friday's Saturday's the weekend there, so I'll be available.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah,
unless I mean, obviously on the Friday and the Saturday, that's the day of the week where I'm going to have to make sure that my bed, that's like a pile of money, is well made. How do you sleep at night, Padre? On top of a pile of money with many beautiful ladies.
You just got to hope you don't get yourself hanged in the first couple of weeks. That's more the problem.
Yeah, I know that it is. The thought has crossed my mind. And I don't think I can really get away with playing like Hella Waits or South of Heaven in class like I did in Italy. So
I highly doubt that.
I was about to say, it's like, what's the metal T-shirt approach going to be?
Wear it at home.
About to say, yeah, you're going to be limited, I think, in some parts.
Yeah, see,
no, I mean, I'm assuming like I would imagine some of the more kind of tepid, like Metallica T-shirts would be okay. I mean, I think my Kill 'Em All T-shirt's a safe bet.
I don't think it is, mate. I don't think it is.
Like, well, who do you want to kill? Who do you want to kill? And I just be like, Americans, and they'll be like, oh, that's fair enough.
Oh no.
Or like, who do you want to kill? Apostates, heretics, the infidel.
Heretics are our listeners, mate. You can't take that stance.
Well, I mean, yes, but heretics in what sense? I mean, obviously, if someone is going to come on here and try and extol the virtues of Bullet for My Valentine or something, then that's heresy, and that is dealt with.
That's now. Look, face it. Within a couple of weeks, you're going to be walking around in a linen suit, wearing a fucking Panama hat.
Well, like the man from DelMonte.
Basically, yeah, you will be the man from DelMonte.
Well, I'm sure that there should be like a metal equivalent of that, where like, you know, you've got all these like record label execs outside a building, and like the man from DelMonte arrives. He goes in and he just listens to something for 3 seconds, and he just like nods at the camera, and then like a small child runs out and goes, "He says yes." Like, you know, that's the approval of the record label. You know, but
No,
just before we go, think about it. Though. How kind of racist or xenophobic were those Man from DelMonte adverts?
You know what? I can't remember a Man from DelMonte advert quite that clearly to remember whether it's racist or not.
No, but it's like, you know, it's like the middle-aged white man with the Panama hat arrives at a tropical island where tribal people are waiting to greet him so he can try their wares, and then he like kind of nods in approval. And the tribe start having a dance because he's like said that their pineapples are fresh enough to be sold by DelMonte. It's like the white savior approaching the tropical island, the savages. It's like, dear God. It's like, you know, I mean, like, if you want to talk fruit, the most racist fruit of all is Granny Smith. Like that's a real person. Granny controls the entire fruit industry.
I think we may have gone down a rabbit hole that we need to climb back out of and get off this episode before people just switch off.
What I will be doing is like when I get into the desert, which I will be visiting, I'm going to go there for 40 days and 40 nights to prepare myself for the
fucking hell
for the tours, and I will be tempted by Satan.
One thing I am expecting of you, though, is within 4 weeks of you being there, I'm expecting to find a listener in Saudi Arabia on our stats, and if that's not the case,
that's what my job is. I spread the word. I spread the word. But like, you know, I'm sure if I go into the desert and I am tempted by Lucifer, I think it's probably going to be in the guise of Bob Rock.
That's it. I'm ending it here. No more Bob Rock talk. That's it. No, we're done. Thank you for listening. No more of it. And yeah, stay metal. See you next week.